Hello listeners and welcome to another week of Industry Standard. I'm your host this week, Chris, and I'm joined with Nathan. Unfortunately, we will not be joined by Jamie this week because he has double booked himself. He is just so popular and so high in demand that unfortunately we'll have to do the show without him. So this week I'm going to ask Nathan to give a quick synopsis, a rundown to all the listeners at home on the movie that we watched this week.
This week we watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which Tarantino likes to call his 9th film, even though it technically isn't. The film is about fading television actor Rick Dalton and his stunt double Cliff Booth, played respectively by Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt. The film is set in 1969 Los Angeles and coincides with the arrival of the Manson family. Alright Chris, so let's start. What did you think of the film?
I thought it was a very entertaining film. There's a lot in it that you can get enjoyment out of, whether it's the characters and their story, the acting within the film, the production design that takes you back to the Hollywood time in the late 60s, early 70s. Of course, the ludicrous build-up and finale that we all come to know with Tarantino films. So I enjoyed it. I didn't love it. I don't, by no means do I think that it's a masterpiece or classic in any sense. And as I already said to you, some people might view it as Tarantino just trying to entertain Tarantino. But I mean, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. What were your opinions on the film?
I'll get out of the way first. I wouldn't say I'm a massive Tarantino fan. I like his films well enough, but I'm not a fanboy who waits for every Tarantino release like it's the second coming of Christ. Having said that, I did really like this film. I would say it's probably my favourite Tarantino film because I think in a lot of ways it's very stripped back and not really a lot of what you would expect of Tarantino. It feels a lot more genuine and a lot more personal than a lot of his films. Like you said, it's kind of like Tarantino entertaining Tarantino. You can tell that everything in this film is something that he loves and he has a genuine interest in.
100%.
And if you've watched any interviews with him over years, you'll see that he's spoken about these things like television actors that he really loved as a child, and he never felt like they got their recognition in the Hollywood environment. So this is kind of Tarantino's way of saying thank you to those people and heroing them in his own work.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that.
I think the cinematography and the sound design are great. I also think in terms of acting, I think this is both DiCaprio and Brad Pitt's best performance in any film that they've made.
Ooh.
Overall, I'm pretty positive about this film. I have some stuff that maybe I'm not a huge fan of that we'll get into in a little bit. Apart from those things that I've just said, yeah, I like this film a lot.
Is there anything in particular that you felt you liked the most from this film or from his previous films that made you like this film the most?
A lot of this film feels like the opening of Inglourious Bastards, where you're in that farmhouse and there's the Jews under the stairs and you have Christoph Waltz come in as a Nazi officer. You know inevitably that something's going to happen to those people under the stairs and you're just waiting for it to happen and you're waiting. That's a 10 to 15 minute build up in that scene, whereas this film feels like that scene on steroids. It's the entirety of the film because you know inevitably something has to happen to Sharon Tate. Like a lot of Tarantino's films, this is historical but kind of alt history, like he likes to do, like Inglourious Bastards or Django Unchained. So I like that. Even though a lot of the film is kind of whimsical and very light-hearted through a lot of it does. There is an ever-growing tension throughout the film that you know something is going to happen in the last 15 minutes and you don't know how serious that's going to be with Tarantino. In terms of what I actually liked the most in this film, it is the chemistry between Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm surprised that really they haven't. I don't think they've done a film before this where they're in it together.
No, not to my knowledge. Can I think of anything that the two lads have been in together?
Not to my knowledge, but I thought they had great chemistry, and I'd be really surprised if within the next. I'm surprised it hasn't happened already, but I'll be surprised in the next 5 years if they're not in more films together because of how good that chemistry was between the two of them.
You actually just felt for the two characters because of what the two lads brought to the table. You could get, I know it's not really a heroism movie, but you could get behind the two of them. I remember there was a part near the end of the movie where Leonardo has to tell Brad Pitt that he's no longer going to be able to avail of his services. At that point, I'm kind of like, oh, there's going to be a falling out here and stuff like that. No, they do a great job of just building a friendship. You really see the friendship come through the screen. And again, it's because, as you said, the chemistry between the two lads.
You really feel it throughout the whole film as well. We've obviously mentioned and DiCaprio and Brad Pitt. But this film has like an incredible cast. It also has Margot Robbie, Margaret Qualley, Timothy Olyphant, Dakota Fanning, Bruce Dern, Damian Lewis, and of course Al Pacino.
Luke Perry as well. I don't know if you mentioned.
Oh yeah, Luke Perry is in it. He died shortly after, I think.
He did. I believe it was his last movie appearance. If you take note, the sheriff in one of the films when he's talking to Leonardo, I've seen him in a couple of Tarantino movies as well. Tarantino always kind of seems to bring back a lot of the people that he's worked with over the years.
Oh yeah, that's the guy from Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
He's the bad guy in Reservoir. I can't remember his name.
You get to see a lot of familiar faces in the film.
So Burt Reynolds was also supposed to be in this film. He was supposed to play the character that Bruce Dern plays. Okay. The owner of Spawn Ranch.
Yes.
And he died just before they could begin shooting. He was at the table reading everything.
That's right, he died in 2018. I never knew that. No, I'm a big Burt Reynolds fan.
Let's kind of get a bit more into the story. What were your feelings on the story itself?
I mean, I enjoyed following. I enjoyed Leonardo's story arc of, you know, learning that he is a washed up has-been of some sorts, and that he's trying to either come to terms with it or figure out what his next step is. And of course his friendship with Brad Pitt, and how we kind of learn the bad things that Brad Pitt has done and why he's not so well respected in the industry.
Are you talking about the murder of his wife?
Yeah, the murder of his wife.
I found that weird. They never cleared that up in the film if he actually did it or not.
Well, it's because that's based on a don't ask me who the people in real life names are.
I know it's based on true story with some woman I can't remember her name either.
She was taken out. They were drowned. They were out on a boat trip with the husband and it was a boating accident, but people believe that the husband drowned her.
And Christopher Walken was there.
Oh,
yeah, Christopher Walken was there. That's about all I know of the story.
This is probably stuff that I wouldn't mind doing a bit of research and finding out the full story. I feel like a lot of this, I think some people are going to have an issue with this movie, because I sure struggled at times to pick up all the relations to true events, if you know what I'm trying to say.
All of the references, yeah.
All the references.
This film is very much steeped in Hollywood history. Mm-hmm. I would say it's probably a lot more historical than a lot of Tarantino's other films, including Inglourious Bastards or The Hateful Eight.
Yeah.
You can tell that this is a time he's obviously very passionate about in Hollywood history.
All the stuff that this film is referencing has happened not just in the 60s but in the 70s and the early 80s. And the way he's managed to intertwine all these references into one film, I enjoyed it. I got to say it's quite clever.
What did you make of Sharon Tate throughout the film? Margot Robbie's character.
She doesn't do a whole lot. She doesn't have like a massive part to the film. And I remember the first time I seen this film in the cinema, and I didn't take much notice because of her insignificance within the film. But then you start to realise that, hold on now, is Tarantino really going to go in the direction that I think he's going to go? No, he doesn't. And I once thankfully, he doesn't go into that. He does a very strange twist instead. But yeah, as I said, she doesn't have a massive role in the film, but is still able to, well, for me anyway, to create the massive tension when you're getting to the last half hour of the film, because you think it's going to go in a certain direction.
Yeah, I think that's probably my biggest criticism of the film is the Sharon Tate character and her arc in the film, because she doesn't do anything at all. I kind of just wish that he had spent more time with that character. Now, I think he did a good job of making the audience sympathetic and kind of liking her, especially with the scene where she goes to the cinema and watches her own film. I think that's seen as very endearing. But I could have done just a few more scenes with her. She has, hold on, I have it right here. Do you want to know how many scenes she has in the film? Or how many lines she has?
How many?
50 lines in the whole film.
Oh my god.
That's it, like.
Well, like,
a lot of them are nothing.
After when I seen it for the first time when it came out in cinema, I had the same opinion. I was kind of like, well, they didn't give her a whole lot. But now after watching it the second time and saying what I said to you there, she has nothing to offer to the story. She's only there to create that bit of tension. So would having a bigger part in the film be weird because of where we get to at the end?
I didn't even necessarily need her to have like a bigger part in the film. I didn't even need her to interact with Brad Pitt's character or Leonardo DiCaprio's character. I just would have liked to have seen more scenes with her. I probably would have been critical of that as well, depending how he went about it.
Yeah.
Because then you get into a lot of stuff with Roman Polanski, and he's a fucking scumbag.
Yeah.
So.
He's wanted man, isn't he?
Yeah, he's not. He's banned from the Oscars, and I don't think he's allowed into America.
Yeah. We won't. Yeah, that's for a different show, different topic.
I would have preferred to have not seen him in the film at all, if I'm being honest.
There's a whole. I mean, I think there's a whole load of different ways you could look at the inclusion of Sharon Tate and that whole scenario and that whole time period. So yeah, I mean, as I said, she doesn't have a huge part in the film. She doesn't really have anything to do with the end of the film, even though you're led to believe that. I'm glad Tarantino left it at that. Let's just say that.
I remember when the film first came out and it was premiering in Cannes, that he did get a lot of criticism for having...
I believe it.
For having Sharon Tate in the film and not necessarily using Margot Robbie in any major way. And when I first heard that, I was like, oh, whatever. And I saw the film and I was kind of like, oh, it's kind of whatever. But the second time I saw it, I was like, you know what, actually, it kind of drags the film down because her scenes don't go anywhere and they don't connect.
Yeah.
You can either cut a lot of her scenes out, or you need to expand them, because having them in there at the moment just feels like a drag on the film.
I think you can interpret it in a few ways, or you could look at it a few ways, and I think there's merit to what anyone would say about that. You can either include more, or you can take away, or do you know what I'm trying to say? There's a lot of people have different opinions on the whole Sharon Tate, and I get it. I think I understand.
Tarantino does this kind of thing in his films a lot of the times. Like, I remember he said it when Inglourious Basterds came out. I think he might have said it about Django as well. But Tarantino genuinely believes that if his characters were real and they were in the world, they could stop these bad things from happening. Whether it's the murder of Sharon Tate, or I believe he said that his characters in Inglourious Basterds, if they were real, would have killed Hitler.
Well, I mean, like, if anyone's taking Tarantino's opinion as gospel, then you're only fooling yourself, to be honest. So... The fella's a nut job. He's a gifted nut job, but a nut job nonetheless. He knows how to create tension within a film.
Since we're talking about tension, do you want to talk about the scene in Spawn Ranch with Brad Pitt? What was your opinion of that?
Sure, I really enjoyed it because, again, it's building tension. What's going to happen, Brad Pitt's character? Because you as an audience watching it already know the significance and where he is and who the people is that he's dealing with. And through the whole time you're thinking, well, this fella's not coming out of here alive anyway, that's for sure. So I thought I enjoyed it.
That's probably one of my favourite scenes in the film, and I kind of did some research into it after the fact, and I discovered that Tarantino had actually directly spoken to his people in sound post-production, and he wanted it to feel like a horror film, which I went back and watched the scene and I was like, oh yeah, okay, I hear it now, because you have a rat squeaking, you have a door creaking, and you have obviously all of the floorboards underneath Cliff's shoes obviously creaking as well. And if you listen to the music, it's very reminiscent of old Hammer horror films.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the music pulled me in straight away I think it's when he's in the house and he's going to walk down to the hall. I think loved it. Loved that old style of horror score.
It kind of reminded me of The Hills of Eyes in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because you're obviously in this strange kind of foreign community to Cliff, and he obviously isn't sure what's going on. But yeah, I thought that was a great scene.
The performance of the hippies on the ranch, very kind of, there's something wrong with these people, and it really comes across on the screen with the looks on their faces, the way they speak and stuff like that, even just their postures and stuff like that. It's just really well done.
Yeah, and there's a lot of shots of feet in that scene as well.
There's a lot of shots of feet throughout the entire movie.
Since we're here, I want you to take 2 guesses for me. How many shots of feet were in the film?
Well, let me guess. There is 6 of Margot Robbie in the cinema. I'm going to say
36, Chris. There's 36 goddamn shots of feet. Yeah. Now, to be fair, some of those feet are in shoes. Okay, so the second question. Oh,
you're hardly including where Margot Robbie is walking down.
I am including every shot of a foot in this film. There is 36 of them. Now, how long in the running time of the film is that, do you think?
Oh, God, I don't know. 10 minutes.
Well, you're not far off. It's 9 minutes and 34 seconds.
Hey.
9 minutes and 34 seconds of feet, Chris.
As I said, I think it's Tarantino trying to entertain Tarantino. That's all this film is. And he's successful entertaining everyone else.
Yeah, and we're not kink shaming. We're just
No,
pointing
I'm
out
not.
a fact.
Yeah, I'm not joking. But it's like Tarantino has gotten to the stage where it's like, I'm not going to hide things. I don't care anymore. Just give me wall to wall feet and violence. I don't care anymore. I'm not even going to try and be poetic about it.
What did you think of the overall structure of the film? Because I think obviously Tarantino has a certain non-linear structure he likes to follow throughout his films, and it's definitely in this film as well. But I think this is probably the most buck wild Tarantino has ever gone with the timeline of his film, because there's scenes just arranged in different positions.
Yeah, there's a lot of jumping around the place between characters and back and forth, and a lot of it works. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy a lot of it sometimes, and it's not so bad the second time you watch it. Maybe that's Tarantino obviously has watched this over and over and over again stuff, but I think when you watch it the first time, it can be jarring, as you said, a little all over the place.
Especially the first time you watch it, it is kind of a bit confusing when scenes take place in the timeline. But once you see it a second time, you're kind of expecting it and you're used to it. I think it works well.
I'd say Tarantino is so confident that you're going to watch this more than once, that you're by the second or the third time, you're going to get it. You're going to understand what he tried to do there. But the first time you watch it, I remember at the cinema, I left a little confused.
No, I would agree with that, but I'd also say, going back to your point, Tarantino's films are usually worth watching a second or even a third time, just because he does so much interesting things with how he structures his film and the time in it, even if it sometimes comes across as disorientating or even mildly distracting. I still think his best use of it is in Pulp Fiction, but I do think it worked. I think it worked here.
I think especially if you've given the film a second chance or multiple times, I think you understand what he tried to do there. I particularly like how he went about Brad Pitt's story, how we learn about what he'd done, and also why there is an issue with getting work and stuff like that, and the whole confrontation with Bruce Lee and stuff.
Can we talk about the Bruce Lee scene for a second?
Sure.
What did you think of it? Because I think it's a very strange scene, even for Tarantino. I think it's a weird scene.
It is, and I remember reading that the Bruce Lee dynasty family had a real issue with the portrayal of Bruce Lee within the film, but multiple accounts state that Bruce Lee was quite arrogant and at times ignorant when it came to the belief in himself, the belief in his fighting abilities, and he would at times have to demonstrate that. So I think this is Tarantino's understanding and belief in who Bruce Lee was.
So I remember reading the same thing as you at the time, with them saying that Bruce Lee's family wasn't happy with it. And I know China even demanded it be censored out of the film, and Tarantino refused, and then the film didn't go to China. But that's
I didn't know it went as far as...
It did. It didn't screen in China, which honestly, fuck the Chinese government. So that's whatever. They literally have concentration camps. So yeah. So when I watched the film the first time, I didn't really have an issue with the Bruce Lee scene. But when I watched it this time, I obviously watched it a bit more critically, and I don't think I like it.
Okay.
I get what you're saying about Bruce Lee kind of having this reputation of being somewhat arrogant and wanting to be a big man when he was around people, but it kind of feels weird that you would put this real life character down, who was obviously a hero to millions of people, just to boast your own character and big your own character up.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
No,
that just seems strange to me.
It is a strange one. I mean, we go from... As you said there, basically that, and also incorporating the issue of is it the director's wife that has the issue with?
I think it's the stuntman's wife.
Yeah, no, I 100%. I even look. It's an amusing scene.
No, yeah, it's a great scene.
But I did even when leaving or even straight after leaving the cinema, I was like that. That was a strange scene to incorporate within the movie, and I still felt that way watching it this week for the show.
Even if it was just a character that was supposed to be Bruce Lee, but you didn't say Bruce Lee, you said, Stephen Lee, whatever the fuck, it doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like saying that it is Bruce Lee, having it clearly be Bruce Lee, it seemed like a weird way to big your own character, big your
shit
own
on someone.
fictional character. Yes, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Yeah,
that's basically what the scene accomplishes there. It bigs up this fictitious character while shitting on the legacy of Bruce Lee.
Again, it is a funny scene.
It is funny. Especially when he
funny.
throws him up against the door of the car.
Yeah, but it's just, I don't
And the
know.
wall.
Could you have done? could you have done that with another character? I think you probably could have,
Maybe.
and you didn't have to say it's Bruce Lee.
And again, it plays off the historical events of the issue that the stuntman on the Green Hornet had with Bruce Lee back in the 60s.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a strange one. I'm not going to question it too much, but I will totally at the same time understand people being confused by it and possibly offended by it.
I can definitely understand people being upset about it, especially if they're big Bruce Lee fans.
Yeah, I can totally understand where the family were coming from. It has not been easy for that family. The movie industry has not been kind to that family.
Is there any other scenes that stick out in your mind, apart from the last scene though? Is there any other scenes?
I think we were talking about when Margot Robbie's character is walking through the streets and stuff. I find it captivating because you get a real sense of what Hollywood was like at the time, the Hollywood streets and stuff, and a lot of detail went into these scenes.
According to people who worked on the production, according to Tarantino, absolutely zero CGI was used to make those buildings look like they would have in the 60s. It was all, massive cutouts that were put in front of the businesses that they eventually agreed to. The city of Los Angeles really went out of its way to accommodate Tarantino for this film.
Yeah.
Because I know that they even shut down a section of the Los Angeles highway. And if you know anything about the Los Angeles highway, it's apparently not ideal. Apparently, like one of the busiest highways in the world. But they shut down a section of the highway so Tarantino could shoot this section of his film where Brad Pitt is driving. So there was a lot of practical effects and practical techniques used instead of what we have nowadays with CGI, which I appreciated that.
I appreciate it too. I think the whole effect that it did was it's just stunning, just absolutely beautiful, and it really brings you into the film. It actually just brings you into the 60s, early 70s in Hollywood. Another thing I really enjoyed, if you remember, you might disagree, is the shot when Margot Robbie and I can't think of the actor's name are driving to the Playboy Mansion, and we get the shot inside in the classic, not even sure what car it was, beautiful car, but I again, none of that was done from looking at it was done in a studio in front of a screen. That was all just shot the way it was, and I thought it was really nice.
Yeah, as far as I know, a lot of this film was shot on location.
Yeah.
From my understanding. Because you brought it up, what did you think of that Playboy scene?
Another strange one because of the way your man describes the relationship between the three characters.
What I'll say is, I thought the scene looked great, especially the lighting. I thought the actual lighting in that scene was fantastic. But it's the one scene in the film where I can look at it and then go, that scene does not need to be here, and it could be completely taken out and it wouldn't affect the film at all. It just doesn't need to be in the film.
The whole reason for that scene is just to understand the relationship between those three characters.
And it never comes up again. It never comes up again in the whole film. That's kind of what I'm saying about the Margot Robbie character.
So again, if someone turned around to me and said that, oh, he kind of used this scene to make fun or to shit on Sharon Tate for having a particular taste in men, do you know what I'm trying to say? There was just it almost put her in the bad light because she was engaged to someone and flew out to make a movie in England and then got engaged with the other. Do you know, it was just a strange. But then again, the 60s were a strange time. You could, I think anyone who doesn't understand the 60s would find that a very strange situation.
That's interesting that you said that, because I don't think that was... I can definitely see how you saw that in the scene. I don't think that was even Tarantino's intention that you got that you would get that he was trying to put her down that scene. Because I think throughout this film, and especially if you listen to some of the interviews and stuff that he did around the film, he seems to actually have a real love for Sharon Tate, and he you know what I mean? He wishes that she had got the opportunity to continue on with her career.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a lot of this film feels like. It feels like he really loved this character, and obviously we'll talk about the end scene in a little bit, but he wanted her to survive and go on and do more. So yeah, it's interesting that you got that from that scene, though.
I mean, it's definitely a way you could consider to look at it. I'm not as you said there, it by no means was it the intention of Tarantino, but you could look at it that way.
So what did you make of the scene where to film his scene?
That is probably most favourite part of the film because of the acting that's brought to the table by Leonardo DiCaprio, and just the look of what it's like to work on a set like that. From an actor's perspective, I really enjoyed it. From someone who's worked on sets and seen it firsthand and stuff, I thought they captured that situation perfectly.
Yeah, and he's allowed to do so much in that sequence as well. Like, he kind of starts as like this pathetic, washed up actor, and then he moves on to playing this overreacting villain, and then he kind of becomes like a real villain in the scene. Even within that like 30-minute sequence of the film, there really is like the entire arc of what DiCaprio's character is going through in this film. So I agree with you. It's definitely one of my favorite scenes in the film. I think, honestly, especially when DiCaprio was in his trailer shouting at himself, entirely improv, shockingly, because Tarantino usually doesn't allow that. That's like the funniest scene.
It's brilliant.
DiCaprio has ever done. That's what I'm saying. This is the film that DiCaprio should have won the Oscar for. He's so good in it.
Absolutely brilliant. It's just such a breath of fresh air, such a mixture of feelings. You really feel for the character, but it's so over the top, it's funny, especially when he says he's never drinking again and he's giving out to himself. And what does he do? He goes straight back to the alcohol and then starts giving out to himself again. It's just,
and threatens to blow his own head off.
He's giving out to himself in the mirror and stuff. It's just, I agree. I was always a huge fan of Leonardo DiCaprio, but I just loved him even more after that scene. He was just absolutely brilliant.
This is easily Tarantino's funniest film. There's so much funny gaffes and like sequences, and I'd love to see Tarantino just like straight shoot do a comedy. I'd love to see what that looks like, because if it's anything like this, like, you know, I can't even imagine.
He does black comedy well, but this was a little bit more adventurous in terms of being funny and stuff like that. It was just little one-liners, just little things that happen in the scenes, little reactions. Brilliant. Definitely the more light-hearted side of Tarantino.
Yeah, and Tarantino has always been kind of funny in his films, even going back to Pulp Fiction, where even though it's a brutal scene, there like you said, there is a dark comedy to it when your man's getting his ear cut off and they're singing Stuck in the Middle with You. It's fantastic, as our long lost co-host Jane Baran would say.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. May he rest in somewhere
pieces.
Hopefully not in peace.
We said we weren't going to be mean.
We won't be. Okay. Do you want to talk about the end of the film?
Yeah. We'll jump on to the end of the film, I suppose.
The end of the film, it comes when Tex and the rest of the people from the Manson family arrive at Cielo Drive, and they're there with the intention to kill Sharon Tate. Again, I think especially the start of this sequence is incredibly funny as well. I think you have Cliff Booth, he comes out, he starts shouting at them for their shitty muffler in their car. They drive out and they have this long conversation in the car, the Manson family, about going in and killing Cliff Booth. What did you think of that section?
It's Rick that comes out, Leonardo's character, that goes out to give out to them. I think Cliff at the time is getting high. I can't remember, is it weed that Cliff smokes, or is it something mixed?
He smokes an acid dipped cigarette.
Yeah, that's what it was. And he'd been saving that for a while or something. Yeah, I mean, if you watch this film and you weren't prepared for something so ludicrously over the top and brutal, then you obviously had never seen a Tarantino movie before. I was not surprised with what happened in the ending scenes. Obviously the twist was something that I was thankful for. I don't think anyone would have wanted Tarantino to have been more true to the historical events, but I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. It's over the top brutal, mixed with some great comedy and some great costume design, I'm going to say, some sort of production, due to the brutalness of one of the hippies getting absolutely bashed to pieces. It's a load of fun.
Did you like it?
Am I a bad person for liking such brutality and getting amused?
I mean, no, that's what Tarantino does in these films, you know, and
it's very amusing.
It's supposed to be fun. Yeah, I think I'm on the opposite side of you. I hated the scene. I hated the end of the scene. I really liked the setup of all the hippies in the car, and you get some fantastic dialogue in the car of them convincing themselves to kill Leonardo's character. The scene in the car with all the hippies is just a lot of fun. But then when we get in, I just thought, in terms of violence, the film is very pulled back, and there's not a lot of it, especially for a Tarantino film. And I think when it happens, it just feels, because I actually think it's maybe one of Tarantino's most brutal violent scenes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and I just thought it was too much. I thought it was too much when the rest of the film had been so pulled back and stripped kind of bare of all that stuff, that you get this extremely violent scene, and I kind of started to feel a bit ridiculous at a point.
Yeah.
Especially when one of the women run out screaming and end up getting burnt alive.
Yeah.
Which, albeit, is kind of funny when he comes out with the flamethrower. But for me, I just think it was a bit too much. And even though it is a Tarantino film, it just came out of left field a small bit.
See, again, I'm trying to look at it in multiple ways. I feel like if Tarantino had toned that down, I think there's going to be people out there that were disappointed, because you would have felt that the movie went there was we built to nothing, that there was nothing to the film. I can understand where people like yourself will look at it and go, it's actually just ridiculous at points. It's too over the top, some of the brutality and stuff. I think I'm somewhere in between, and I think it's because I'm able to look at it from both sides and kind of, I will admit I enjoyed it because I knew what to expect. I enjoyed it the second time round more than I did the first time. I think when I left the cinema the first time, I just went, what the fuck? What just happened there for the last...
Yeah.
Because the last half hour to 20 minutes is completely bipolar to
the rest of the film. Yeah, I'd agree. And the thing is, I enjoy Tarantino's violence. I like what he does with violence and how over the top he can make it. But I think in a film like this, which is very much... It is very stripped back and much more set into real worlds than his other films, maybe except Jackie Brown. But I just don't feel like the violence worked in this film.
As I said, this is Tarantino trying to entertain Tarantino, and I feel it's you're almost watching it going, well, Tarantino just had to put his mark on the film somehow. If he doesn't get the slow build throughout his film incorporated with bits of violence leading up to a big piece of violence that he just wanted to stick this in at the end, since he didn't get to do that throughout the film, that he was just going to go over the top at the end. And I can understand where people will like it, and I also understand where people go, it had no place there, that it didn't fit, it didn't work.
I think that's kind of where I stand. Having said that, when all of that violence ends and we lead into DiCaprio's character going up to the Tate house, and we close with the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood like a fairy tale.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that. I think that was a lovely bookend to the film. But again, like you said, it does feel very bipolar to what happened not 5 minutes previous.
Yeah.
I think that last scene is my biggest criticism of the film.
It is hilarious, though.
When she gets burned alive, that's funny. But everything before that, when she's actually just running around screaming, it's just...
Oh, yeah. It's nonsense at times. But I do enjoy the way Brad Pitt handles the situation being off his face on an acid cigarette. Like, he starts laughing at Tex and stuff, and the way that he reacts to the ginger one and stuff, and bashing her head in and stuff. Like, I feel like such a bad person to say it, but it is amusing. It is funny.
Well, Chris, you are a bad person.
Look, I didn't, I don't want that to, I don't want people to know that, I'd like to keep that to myself. How did you feel about the one-off appearance of Manson? Was he needed?
Again, okay. So I think that question again comes back to Sharon Tate's character in the film. There is not enough of her. If we had spent more time with Sharon Tate in the film, I think Manson showing up at the house would have felt more foreboding.
Okay, yeah.
Obviously, we're in 2021. We know what Manson showing up at that house means. Like, we know what that means. But because there's not enough time with Tate, especially in that scene, you kind of come away feeling nothing. That guy was also in David Fincher's Mindhunter on Netflix, and he played Manson. So he's played Charlie Manson now twice. And he's a great Charlie Manson. It was a pity. It comes down to Sharon Tate, I think is the answer to your question. If we had more time with Sharon Tate.
I think I'll agree with you on that one. I think I'll have the same opinion on that it just comes down to the same situation as Sharon.
Because, I mean, look, not getting all into the Manson murders or whatever, but the Manson family are more important than Charlie Manson, so I was happy that we got to spend a good section of the film with them. So it didn't bother me that much that we didn't see Charlie Manson that much. Again, for me, it just comes back to we didn't have enough time with Sharon Tate, and there wasn't enough material for her there.
Yeah, at no point was I watching the film and I was annoyed that we didn't dive into Charlie Manson more, that we didn't get to see him, nothing like that. And then when you're watching the film, like, holy that's Charlie Manson anyway. It takes you back, it hits you there and stuff. But it's just just for the first time when we were talking through the show about Sharon's character and her importance to the story, I said I had to ask about your opinion on Charlie as well.
If you want to see that guy play a good Charlie Manson, just look it up on YouTube. Alright, so let's move on to cinematography and lighting. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
So before we get into anything, because it's a Tarantino film, I'm just going to jump in with some of the technical details. So obviously this film was shot on film, and it was shot with Kodak Vision 3 200T negative film.
Brilliant.
And it was shot on a Panavision Panaflex Millennium XL2.
Okay, very nice.
With Panavision anamorphic lenses. We don't usually do this, but because it's Tarantino and he has such a distinctive style, especially when it comes to the cameras and the film stock that he chooses, I thought it was worth.
He knows what he wants.
He does. It was shot by Robert Richardson, and he's done all of Tarantino's films since Kill Bill Volume 1. I think this is probably his best in terms of how the film looks for Tarantino. He's also worked a lot with Scorsese, and for some reason, after doing all of that great work, he decided to do the Venom sequel. So,
oh, harsh from Nathan.
it seems like a twist.
I wouldn't be the biggest fan of Venom. I think it was fine. I was disappointed in a lot of ways, but I'm looking forward to the sequel. So hopefully that's the fact that he is working on either a shitload of money was thrown his way, or he has just as much confidence in the sequel as the rest of us do, except for you.
Oh, I would imagine it was the former, Chris. I'd imagine he got off a bit of money. In my opinion, this is Tarantino's best looking film.
Oh, it's stunning.
Just in terms of the colour of how vibrant it is. It's not oversaturated. It's right on the. I think it's right on the line of being oversaturated a lot of the time, but it's not. And obviously a lot of that comes down to colour grading, but obviously a good chunk of it comes down to lighting, and I think this film is excellent in terms of that stuff. And you have to imagine they had to incorporate a lot of stuff from early television, especially when they're shooting that scene with DiCaprio in the saloon when he's playing opposite Timothy Olyphant. There's a lot of different techniques and styles used in this film.
There's little ones that people miss as well that I thought was impressive. I think it's somewhere the last hour of the film, but it's basically it's shown Leonardo DiCaprio a black and white film or TV show where he's driving the car, he's trying to get away. All that was shot just really beautifully as well. Really captures the old style of cinematography back in the day and stuff like that. So, I thought that was impressive. I think this film does a great job of mixing multiple styles and techniques throughout the years.
Yeah, and I think what was most impressive to me in the film, I don't know how you feel about it, but was the crane shots. They use a lot of them. Use maybe 3 or 4 crane shots in the film, but they all stick out. And I think
I can't think of any.
So the most impressive one is actually the first one. It's when Cliff is driving back to his trailer. We cut to a shot of him driving into the trailer, and then the camera cranes and lifts upwards, and we peer into a drive-in cinema.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
I think that's the best shot of Tarantino's entire filmography. It's just that good.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Is there anything else that sticks out in your mind?
I mean, I'll be clutching at straws here, just because, yeah, a lot of the film is just the way it's shot with the light. I've already said about almost oversaturated with the colours and stuff. You get that feeling of what it was like to live in the big city of Hollywood. You know, everything's just so bright, everything's so colourful, everything's just, you want to be there. Yeah, I'm clutching at straws now, but even I'm a sucker for tracking shots, but I just love that tracking shot when we go from around Leonardo's shoulder in the saloon, and we pull around, and that's where he messes up his lines, and he's giving out.
That's a great scene.
It's great, wonderful scene. But that tracking shot is just that whole tracking shot, the way you see the characters over to Leonardo and then the saloon, is just beautiful. It's really well done.
And then obviously because the way that scene plays out, we see that shot a couple of times.
Yeah, and the way it has to come back and everything.
The camera starts in one position, ends in another, and
you could even the scene where he's inside in his trailer, everything's very congested. We just went from a big open area of the saloon into a very congested,
claustrophobic.
Yeah, so it was just really well shot, everything.
Well, yeah, so I guess that kind of leads into production design of the film, which again is a Tarantino film ever since. Probably, yeah, I'd say Pulp Fiction. The production design on his films have always been like the best of whatever year they come out, and obviously it was this year as well because they won an Oscar for it. But there's so many just small things, especially in this film, which is obviously a period piece, and we see obviously all the old televisions, we see all of the old storefronts and all of this stuff. And again, Tarantino likes to put in his own brand of products, but I know there's a certain brand of cigarettes that all of his characters smoke.
That's right.
In this film, he introduces a brand of dog food.
Yes, yeah.
I can't remember what's called off the top of my head, but he has, I think there's 2 different flavours, rat flavoured and raccoon flavoured. So again, I enjoy when he puts in small things like that in the film.
You can also really tell that he's a lover of cars, because the cars that he had selected for the time period, just absolutely beautiful. Can only imagine how much it cost to get to rent those cars during filming and stuff like that, or to even find some of these cars was impressive. But that just goes to show the attention to detail we get from Tarantino in his movies. Just wonderful. Above and beyond he goes. You also have the old movie posters outside the theatre and the way the theatre looks and everything.
Oh yeah, and I think what's impressive about that, because they're not, again, it's a very Tarantino thing. You look at those film posters and you're like, what is this film? You never know, because Tarantino obviously puts in pretty obscure media, whether it's like B movies from the 50s, 60s or 70s, or I know there was, he's a big fan of blaxploitation films because that's what he grew up with, and I think you see a trailer for one while he's while Sharon Tate is in the cinema. So yeah, I always take notice of what he's actually, more than probably a lot of what's on screen. I kind of try to look at what's in the background and what he's included, because that's kind of where you see a lot more of his actual passion come through.
Yeah.
We saw that in Inglourious Bastards as well, when obviously there's a big set piece in a cinema and you see a lot of old 30s and 20s, 30s, 40s French noir films. Any thoughts on the sound and score? I know we talked a bit about the scene in Spawn Ranch.
Something I've always liked about Tarantino, some people might like, but I always kind of like the music that he selects for his films. It really fits the time period, or just really helps with the scene. So there's nothing different here in this film.
There's not a Tarantino film off the top of my head that you couldn't just make a playlist of the songs in it and just kind of vibe away to it, because he like you said, he's so good at music choice in his films, and he picks, as far as I know, he picks them all himself. He just goes into like this massive record room that he has in his house and goes through all of his vinyls and just picks out from there. Let's go on to editing. Shall I give you a bit of background first on who edited this film? It was edited by Fred Raskin. He's edited all Tarantino's films since Django. He's also worked on both of the Guardians of the Galaxy films, and for some reason he also worked on Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift.
Oh, I suppose he had to try and rectify his career after that one.
Yes, so he has a very storied filmography. I think he's also editing the new Suicide Squad. So this guy has I'm not sure what's going on with him.
I think the first thing I want to bring up, and it's not an editing thing, but I'm gonna bring it up here because it's something I want to get off my chest. But did you notice the continuity within the film?
I feel like this would be a longer discussion, so I'll just start off by saying no, I did not notice it. Why?
Because it's done on purpose. So,
what do you mean?
So the first time I noticed the continuity errors is during the scene between Al Pacino and Leonardo DiCaprio in the restaurant. And we have a shot of Leonardo in one position, and when we cut to another angle, he's in a different position. Then we have him put down a glass of water, but in the next scene, he's holding a fork. And then there's...
Oh, yes, yeah.
And then another scene is he's doing nothing, but then when we cut to another angle, he's smoking a cigarette. And I in my head, I was like, this is a lot of continuity errors to have in one bit. But then I noticed when he's in the trailer and he meets the director for the spaghetti western for the first time, he starts... do you remember the part where the director says, I want to do something with your hair? And Leonardo DiCaprio's like, my hair, why my hair? And his hair is all scruffy and in the wrong place. And it just looks bad. And when it cuts back to him, his hair is perfect. So that made me think that this must be done on purpose. Because how could we be talking about Leonardo DiCaprio's hair? Like, how can a continuity issue like this happen? Yeah. So I'm wondering, is that a homage to the amount of continuity errors we had back in those days?
Did you confirm that? No,
I didn't look into it. No.
I'd imagine you might be right. So, did that bother you?
It did at the start, but then when I realised the bit at the hair, I was like, oh, hold on now, I think this is done on purpose, because they're literally talking about his hair, and it's a continuity error with his hair. So I was like, this must be... If it's not... I'm shocked that this kind of continuity errors would happen in this film. But if it is, then it must be because it's a homage to, because that back in those kind of movies, those kind of TV programs were notorious for continuity issues just like that.
I used to be really bad at like spotting continuity errors. Like I used to see them every time I watched a film. I could always point them out, and they used to really fucking annoy me, and I just couldn't get over it. But then I don't know. You've heard of the book. I don't know if you've read it, but have you read in a blink of an eye the Walter Murch book?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ever since I read that, and he lists out the steps of what's important with editing, and at the very bottom he puts down that continuity is the least important thing when it comes to editing. So ever since I've read that, I've just kind of learned to live with continuity errors. So I just don't spot them as much. I only spot them if they're like very blatant. So to be honest with you, I didn't notice because I gave up looking for continuity errors a long time ago.
The actual editing, thought it was good, paced well. I say that nearly most weeks, but yeah, it's paced well. Again, it boils down telling certain aspects of character stories and stuff, going back and forth. I know we already said about how at times, especially the first time you watch it, it can be jarring and confusing. But it's still good. It's probably, the editor has to do what the director wants anyway. So,
And if it's a Tarantino film, you can bet that Tarantino is doing exactly what he's told. You can bet that there's no fucking argument in that editing.
No, just smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave.
Interestingly, though, apparently, according to what I've read, and I think Tarantino even said it, this film was originally supposed to be his first novel. So again, I think that maybe plays into a bit more of the structure of the film, because I think a lot of the film, maybe you don't feel the same, but a lot of the film does kind of feel a bit aimless.
No, I cannot argue that if anyone felt that at points, or even if someone said to me that they felt the film as a whole was aimless, I would totally understand if someone said that.
Let's get into our final thoughts. So, Chris, I'll give it to you. Would you recommend this film?
I would. I think most people will get enjoyment out of this film because it has a lot to offer. It has fantastic acting from the leads, supporting leads. It has a beautiful representation and throwback to the culture and look of the 60s and the 70s and Hollywood. Even though do you know what? I think the people that are having issue with this the most, I'm not sure, what I'm trying to say is I think the people that have an issue with this the most is die-hard Tarantino fans. I think if anyone's going to have an issue with it, it's going to be die-hard Tarantino fans. But it has something to offer for everybody, between the over-the-top brutality, the building of the tension for Tarantino movies, because something, they're always leading to something, and as I said, it's all booted with beautiful production, wonderful acting, and a very easy story to get behind and understand. So yeah, I liked it. I really liked it. I don't know if I could say I loved it, but I did. I really liked it, and I could definitely recommend this to people to watch.
Yeah, I'd agree. Not being the biggest Tarantino fan, but liking all these films, I definitely, for me, this is my favourite of his films. Mm-hmm. And like you said, I think even if you're not a Tarantino fan, I think you'll like 95% of this film, except maybe parts of the ending. But like you said, I think it's good showing from Tarantino. I think it's, in a lot of ways, his most mature film. He expresses a lot of his interests, a lot of his love for film and filmmaking in this film. So yeah, no, I'd agree. I think it's kind of an easy recommendation. A quick question: where would you place this in your favourites of Tarantino?
It's a tough question because, as you just said there, very different from anything Tarantino has done before. I think that was wonderful the way you worded it. It's very Tarantino's most mature movie to date. I think I stick it somewhere in the middle or just higher. Yes, somewhere around maybe my fourth favourite Tarantino movie, something like that. Fourth, yeah, I'm gonna go with a strong 4. What about yourself?
Again, because I'm not the biggest Tarantino fan, I'd put this at number 1. He has a lot more to say in this film than he has in a lot of other films.
And I feel like when you say it's his 4th best film, anyone who doesn't know Tarantino would kind of say, oh, that's a bit low, but it's not.
That's high praise. Yeah,
I've said to you before, I'm a huge Pulp Fiction and Dusk Till Dawn. Even I just get great enjoyment out of those movies. True Romance, Django, very very entertaining film. Inglourious Bastards. When it comes to like say even the top 3 Tarantinos, it could be any of those.
It's kind of weird because apparently we only have one more Tarantino film, one more original Tarantino film, according to him.
And is this the one that you said that he wants to take a stab at horror?
I think he mentioned he wanted to do horror, but whether that means he'll only write a horror film, or
I get
it's,
you.
it's Tarantino.
Yeah.
Because he said he's going to make a sequel to Kill Bill. If that happens, it happens. Tarantino was always saying these kind of things.
So a trilogy.
Yeah, but that wouldn't count as his 10th film, apparently.
I'm gonna go on the record here. It's gonna cause probably a lot of backlash. I'm not a fan of Kill Bill.
I hate Kill Bill.
Oh,
I hate Kill Bill.
wow, me and Nathan agreeing on two things in one episode.
It's honestly too much.
I'm not a fan.
I like a lot of the stylized stuff in it, especially the costume design, but
Yeah.
apart from that, I'm not a fan. It is too fucking much. Do you want to sign us out?
I will. So, thanks for listening to this week's episode. We're so sorry that we couldn't present to you Jamie Baran and his opinions.
I'm sure they would have been good.
They would have been good. They would have been top notch. So, look, hopefully he can fit us into his very, very busy schedule and hopefully join us next week. Fingers crossed on that one. We hope you enjoyed the episode. I've been Chris, that's been Nathan, and this has been Industry Standard.